बिस्मिल्लाहिर्रहमानिर्रहीम। अस्सलाम वालेकुम। आप हमारी वीडियो को लाइक कर दिया करें और साथ ही हमारे चैनल को सब्सक्राइब भी कर दें और हर नई नोटिफिकेशन के लिए बेल आइकन को भी दबा दें।
Flashpoint, what is Kashmir, if they do not resolve it, this has potential of having an impact on the entire world. And unfortunately, because of this whole thing about big markets, countries look at markets and trade and employment in their own countries. They look upon India as a market of 1 billion people. They do not realize that if they do not intervene right now, this has consequences, not just, as I said, on the subcontinent, on world trade. Everyone will be affected by this.
You mentioned the U.S. You talked about countries potentially intervening in this crisis. Now, when you were in the United States in July and you met with President Trump, he had made a public offer to try to mediate in the dispute over Kashmir between India and Pakistan. You were open to that. Prime Minister Modi was not. Do you think that this is something that could happen? Because just in the last few days, President Trump has said again that he would be willing to mediate. Do you believe this can happen?
You see, first of all, we are thankful to President Trump because, he's the president of the most powerful country in the world. And if the United States, the president of the United States intervenes in this and seriously intervenes, it's one way that you can guarantee that there will be some sort of a resolution. Secondly, even if he doesn't intervene directly, the United States has this power in the United Nations Security Council. That can, as a Security Council, the UN can act. You see, why I think India is stonewalling this suggestion? Because India knows that once the international community gets involved, then the ruling will be for the people of Kashmir. The international community will insist on the people of Kashmir exercising their right of self-determination.
I'd like to focus on another component of your meeting with President Trump for just a minute, because when you were there, much of your meeting time was taken up with the issue of Afghanistan. Now, I want to ask, what do you make of President Trump basically calling off the peace talks with the Taliban, and how do you believe that's going to impact the security situation for Pakistan?
Well, first let's just concentrate on Afghanistan. Purely from a human point of view, everyone must want to help the Afghans get peace. So therefore, Pakistan is playing its part. Whatever little influence we have on the Taliban, we have asked them to, go on the dialogue table. The talks with the Americans actually were at a pretty advanced stage. The only thing was now to get the Taliban to talk to the Afghan government so that, they can all get together and decide what they want to do. Now, this is unfortunate what has happened. I think it's because of the bloodshed that is going on in Afghanistan. The idea that there is talks, dialogue, and at the same time you're fighting, that always was going to be tricky. So I hope that this is a temporary thing. I hope that President Trump will get the talks going again, because there is no other solution. There is not going to be a military solution. If there was in 19 years, there would have been one. This is already the longest war fought by the Americans. So the only way out is getting back on the dialogue table.
All right, we've spoken a lot about the security situation. I want to turn for a bit to the economy. How would you classify Pakistan's economy? Many people say that it's failing. Many of your critics blame you, including former Finance Minister Ishaq Dar. He blames you for the current economic crisis. What do you say to that and to the other critics who are blaming you for how bad the economy is right now?
Pakistan inherited the worst economy ever in our history. We had the biggest current account deficit, which in our history no other government has had to face. That meant that the rupee, the moment we took over, because there was a shortage of dollar, because we were selling much less than we were buying from the world, that meant there was a pressure on our rupee. And so the rupee devalued. When the rupee devalues, there has to be inflation, because everything we import, fuel affects electricity, because 40% of electricity is from imported fuel. Then gas we import, LNG, that everything gets expensive. So a country goes through a difficult period. But the problem is we inherited this huge deficit. But the good news is that we have brought down the current account deficit by 70%. Our exports are going up, we've curtailed our imports, so the gap has narrowed in our current account deficit, which means we're going in the right direction.
Political leaders around the world, they get branded with nicknames. Now, surely you must be aware that there are critics of yours and others in Pakistan who call you the prime minister of U-turns. And they do so because they say you make U-turns on policy promises. And one such issue they talk about when they mention this is they talk about your stance on the IMF. And they say that before you had promised not to seek out any more help from the IMF, and that now your economic plan is based on a bailout. And if this would be approved, this would be the 13th time in the last 30 years Pakistan has received an assistance package from the IMF. What's different this time? I mean, why?
Let me just say one thing. I'm glad they say I am a prime minister of U-turns. Only an idiot doesn't do any U-turns. Only a moron, when he's on a course and he comes across as a brick wall, only that stupid idiot keeps banging his head against a brick wall. An intelligent person immediately revises his strategy and goes around it.
So you're okay with the nickname?
When I was a cricketer, I mean, we would have a strategy when we would go on the field. But all the time I would be changing my strategy according to the situation. I mean, only a fool would brand someone not doing U-turns. If these corrupt elite in our country, if they had done a U-turn from corruption, they wouldn't be in jails right now. Anyway, let me come back to the main point. IMF, when we got office, we had, we did a $6 billion deal with the IMF. We had $90.5 billion current account deficit. So how were we going to fill in this gap? Unless and until we had a loan in between, and in that time we raised our exports, we cut down our exports. So until that time, which there was going to be a time lag, how were we going to last from that period to the time when we had curtailed the deficit? So you needed a bridging gap. We needed a bridging loan. So, I mean, they should judge me, inshallah, when my 5 years are complete. Then they should ask me, when I'm responsible for my economy, am I going to rely on loans or not? And inshallah, this will be the last IMF package we will ever have.
But as far as now, today, does this mean, talking about the U-turn in this policy, does this mean that you are recognizing that it is necessary for Pakistan's financial stability and for the economy that you must ask for external support?
No, I do not believe if a country manages its economy properly, it should not have to borrow money from IMF or anyone. The fact that you have a big deficit, you have to go and borrow money, means that you're not running your economy properly. But when you inherit a sick economy, then I'm afraid in the short time, before you can raise your income to bridge this gap, I'm afraid you have to take loans. So what I'm pledging to my people that inshallah when our term is completed, we will leave a surplus economy.
But does that mean that the IMF could exercise more control over Pakistan's decision making?
Well, they haven't exercised any control right now, apart from telling us to, put our house in order in terms of cutting down our expenditure and raising our revenues. They haven't really asked us to do anything which is against our sovereignty.
You have a very important relationship with China. If we're talking about the economy, Pakistan is the beneficiary of Chinese aid and investment. It's part of the Global Belt and Road Initiative. But the Chinese government